And when we see someone sick and the doctor says there's no more can be done, we ought to worship the Lord by telling them there's a God of heaven that answers prayers. No matter how much in despair that person has gotten, don't help them do research that will cement unbelief. Sister, what do you say you have? Apathecomia. Apathecomia? I'm coming. You know, this is the day of Google search. Apathecomia killed 20 people in 1960. By year 2000, the millennium year, it has killed 20 million. And 20 years after that, the rate of killing has accelerated to 40 million. Then you come back, sis. It's remaining a little time for us to sing, "This world is not my home," for you. You are not a worshiper. No matter what condition somebody is in, tell them there's a God in heaven that answers prayer. Brother Bram said, listen to me. Brother Bram said, God is sovereign. He can do whatever he wants. But because he promised that if I pray, he will answer, I will still ask. Let me ask. Let him do what he wants. I will not stop asking. I will not stop praying. Don't help anybody to research into unbelief and even do their funeral before they die. That is not worship. Anywhere you are, take side with the Lord. That is worship. You know why you should do that? Because worship connects you. Like the leaves of a tree connects the tree to the sun. Is that right? In order for the sun to get food and be nourished and grow and bear fruit. They call it photosynthesis, isn't it? There's a spiritual photosynthesis. That is what worship does. If you want to be fruitful, if you want to abide, don't allow the devil to take your worship. Do you know even an unbeliever? This will startle you. An unbeliever worshiped the Lord by taking side with Christ. And God was so pleased. How many remember Mrs. Weber? You remember Mrs. Weber? If you don't remember, let me tell you what happened to Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Weber was a neighbor, street neighbor to the prophet. She was so sick until God told the prophet, tell her family she will die. And Brother Bram couldn't tell her directly. He couldn't get the husband. He told the daughter to get in touch with the dad, that he has a message for them. But I think before he could pass the message, I can't remember well, some of the colleagues of Mrs. Weber came to greet her at home, because the hospital now had now discharged her to go and die. So, you know, in the US, I don't know if they do it here, they will say put them in hospice. Hospice is not a place for healing. It's just to maintain and support you till you... But they sent her home to die. So the colleagues of Mrs. Weber came to greet her. And from one talk to the other, they started talking about preachers that are fake, that are good. And they mentioned Brother Abraham. Because somebody said, why don't you get that man to pray for you? The rest said, all of them are fake. You don't mind such things. Do you know what Mrs. Weber did? He said, no, don't talk like that. Don't ever say such a thing. She doesn't go to Bram Tabernacle. But he said, Mr. Abraham is not a fake prophet. He's a genuine servant of the Lord. Don't ever talk like that. He is my neighbor and I know him. Fortunately for Mrs. Weber, the angel of the Lord was passing through the neighborhood. Hey, mind what you are saying anytime, anywhere. Always say the right thing. The prophet said always be positive. Never ever be negative. And the angel of the Lord was passing by. Maybe just passed through her front and was going to the messenger's house. You don't know what happens in the realms of the spirit. And he heard Mrs. Weber saying that. Then when he got to the prophet, he finished his business. He said, by the way, tell Mrs. Weber, send a message to her that she shall live. She will not die. And when you have pronounced her healing, tell her this also, that I heard what she said. Brother Bram didn't know what she said. The angel didn't tell him what she said. But he said, tell her I heard her. What happened? She worshipped. Her action that day by taking side with the truth was a worship. And what did that do? It connected her to her healing, to her deliverance. Brother Brown pronounced the sister, the woman healed. And he said, Mrs. Weber, by the way, the angel of the Lord also said, I should tell you she heard you. What did you say? And Mrs. Weber gave the testimony. And that was the testimony. This is why the prophet said, worship the Lord anytime, anywhere, every hour of our life, or when opportunity presents. You can realize that you cannot be ashamed of this gospel and be a true worshiper. I close with this. The devil knows the power of your worship. And that is why, if he cannot get you to worship him, which for the believer, he cannot get us. What he then tries to do is to destroy your own worship to God. It would not change your sonship. It wouldn't change your daughtership of God, but it could bring you great cost. That is why no matter what happened, don't ever develop complex against God or his worship or even his place of worship. The prophet said, don't never neglect to go to church. He said, you can't be as good as a Christian ought to be when you don't go to church. Because church, if it's a true church, is meant to be like an oasis in this desert land of this world. This world is a desert, no matter the quality of your life. Are you with me? If you are a carnal person, you measure quality and success by physical things. But spiritual men look at greater things. Lot did physical measurements. That was why he chose Sodom. Brother Bram said, when you use your carnal eyes to choose, the things you are not seeing are more than what you are seeing. He didn't see fire hanging over Sodom. He didn't see his wife becoming a pillar of salt. He didn't see all his children perishing except two. He didn't see himself going into incest with the two children. The things you are not seeing are more than what you are seeing. That is why, friends, choose by faith. Do you know? No matter what your struggle level is, up and down, you are still better off hanging around the church. He said, what is he talking about? I'm telling you the word. You are better off in the church. You know what the church does? It places you under atonement. Even if you have not accepted the finished work by yourself, being in the church puts you under atonement. That is why when people misbehave and they are sent out by way of excommunication, the prophet said, you are being taken out of the protection of the blood. And the devil will enjoy full access. Whatever you are going through is nothing compared to what the devil will do to you if he takes you out of range. That is what the Bible said. The Bible warned you. It said, don't look at the world. He said, because if you feel you have a challenge, your people who are in the world have greater challenges. Yeah. Is it not the scripture? Right. Even some of the things you have gone through, they have not gone through half. They are in depression. They've killed themselves. Why are you surviving? The blood pumper. I'm saying worship connects you to your protection, to your healing, to your provision, to your blessings, to your security. And I close with this trick of the devil. If he cannot get you to worship him, he wants to upset you from worshiping God. And that is why he capitalizes on your situations and make you to start having doubts whether this way is really real. Do you know what the prophet said? He said, anytime God has a revival, he said the devil brings his own to create a mockery for the real thing. He said during the Wesley and Luther revival, he was filling insane houses to show to the world that born again people or those who are worshiping God, they worship to insanity. And Brother Bram warned us. He said, have you seen the invasion of wicked and evil spirits even in this message? Huh? That's right. They are to make you, they are to destroy your confidence in the message of the hour. All of you duck your head on internet. Be careful what you are fishing and eating. Some of you will spend hours researching critical sites. You have not spent an hour to even study a spoken word or your Bible. Whatever you are feeding on is what you eventually become. You say, I just want to study it to know the difference. Eve also want to study it to know the difference. And she got caught. And that is why many of you are going into apostasy today. And it's becoming a struggle for you. You are already warned in advance. Wicked and evil spirits will invade this truth. The prophet in the message Anointed Ones, he said when the seals are opened, three things will happen. The world will be in a Sodom condition. Janes and Jambres will arise. Janes and Jambres are always those who are critical of the revival. Are you here? Yes. And he said also it will be the hour for the revelation of the Son of Man. Brother Bram said, there goes your unbeliever, your make-believer, and the real believer. All of them are attracted to this one revival because they need the light of this one revival to manifest for who they are. Be careful and not allow your worship, your consecration, your devotion to be destroyed at this hour. Paul looked at his own congregation. He looked at people who are becoming pity party in their conditions. Some of you, the pastor will be struggling and be getting anxiety by your reactions and the fear whether you will abide in the faith or not. Oh my. If your strength fails in the day of adversity, you got to know you are a weak man. You are a weak Christian. And what is the devil selling to you? When Satan began to tell you that your problem is the most peculiar one, it's not you he's interested in. He wants to take you out of worship. Because until he isolates you, he cannot destroy your life. I'm exposing him this afternoon. So your problem is the most peculiar. No other person under heaven is going through the same thing. And you believe that. Even if you are not spiritual, you should be too intelligent to accept that. You know why I say so? What is the, how do you call it? You guys doing consultancy, what is your population sample? To determine, to base your feasibility upon. How many specimens have you examined? In the street where you live, how many homes have you entered? Do you know there are people inside some houses that have never seen sun for the past 10 years? They are bedridden. And some of them are Christians, still having hope in the Lord that it's going to be all right. Like that Georgie Carter, 17 years on the bed of affliction. Each day was a gathering of new hope until she read the story about the prophet, how the healing came to one lady. And he said, if that lady was healed by the Lord, receive your blessing, my sister. If that lady was healed by the Lord, then she can be healed. 17 years trusting the Lord. Then God, who was ready to heal her, started making her cry like the killer cry of a lamb. Bleating of a lamb. Milltown, Milltown, Milltown. And the prophet began to be interested in Milltown. Where is Milltown? Who knows Milltown? Who can take us to Milltown? And they got to Milltown. And the prophet was living in the house of a fellow, just waiting to see what the Lord would do. Then they were preparing lunch. He said, this bleating is getting stronger in my ear. I got to go to the bush to see what is happening. And when he got to the bush, Milltown changed from go by the way of Georgie Carter. And she had to ask for who Georgie Carter is. My goodness. When the prophet got to the house, he wondered how a human could be so decimated. But that was a day of deliverance, because she never gave up. Congressman Upshaw, 67 years. And there are many more.